So again, everyone, thank you so much for continuing to join us for our Illinois LGBTQ Business Roundtable. I'm excited now to transition into our final session of today, where we'll be talking about evolving expectations in contracting opportunities. And so today we have two awesome partners and a member here with us to help us look into today's conversation. And so you see the awesome photos here, but I'm going to stop sharing screen so that we can just focus on the greatness of who these folks are. All right. Okay, perfect. Well, awesome. So Cynthia and Tim, thank you so much for joining us, taking your time out to be here with us today. Before we dive on into the conversation, I'm sure everyone wants to know who are these folks. And so, Cynthia, if you don't mind, please introduce yourself for us.
Hello, everyone. And Jeremy, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the conversation today. My name is Cynthia Johnson, and I am the director of our Established Business Services program with the Women's Business Development Center. And for those of you that may not know who the WBDC is, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that focuses on helping businesses at every stage of their life cycle. We provide certification for women-owned businesses. We are a procurement technical assistance center. We're an SBDC center. And we also work with veterans. We also have an access to capital program. So we're a very well-rounded organization when it comes to one-stop shopping and resources for business owners, as I mentioned, at every stage of their business life cycle. And we also provide one-on-one business advisory, counseling services at no cost to our clients. And even though our name is the Women's Business Development Center, we are also serving men, women, and anyone in need of resources and services to ignite your business growth. So thank you again for inviting me to join you today.
Perfect. Thank you, Cynthia. And I always tell people that the Women's Business Development Center is probably one of my favorite business support organizations here in Chicago, just because of the vast wealth of resources and the support that you all provide our local community. So thanks to WBDC for all the work that you do. Tim, how about you next?
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Appreciate it. And my name's Tim Frick. I started a digital agency called Mightybytes in 1998. We're an LGBT. We're located in the North Center neighborhood of Chicago, although we've been virtual for the last year and a half or so. And in 2012, I co-founded a group called Illinois of Illinois BCorps, Be Local Illinois. I'll share a little link in the chat. And that is a place-based community of certified B Corps, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later on today. That's kind of my story. I'll stick with it.
Thanks so much, Tim. So again, appreciate both of you for being here with us today. And so everyone, this was a conversation that I thought was helpful to have. I attended a city council meeting maybe a year or two ago. And even since then, I continue to see sort of these conversations rise. Of course, we know it's one thing, and it's a great value to a business to be diverse owned. But as we look forward and we think about contracting, we're starting to see where government and corporate entities are starting to ask other questions beyond just the diversity ownership of the company. There are more factors, other expectations that exist now, or that will definitely continue to emerge as we continue to move forward. And so my hope was through this conversation, we'd be able to learn what some of those opportunities are, where we're seeing different questions being asked and different opportunities being presented, so that we as small business owners can move forward in communicating or evaluating these opportunities for our business. So before we sort of transition there, Cynthia, of course, today we've been talking about, the values, the impact of certification. And so we'd love to hear from you, your perspective, and particularly from being at the WBDC. What is the purpose and value in having a diverse certification if you're wanting to secure corporate and government contracts, or even just general everyday consumers? Then I'm wondering if you can provide one rock star example of how a diverse owned business has leveraged their certification.
Sure. Um, I I think for diverse business owners, it's important to identify ways to differentiate yourselves from your competition. Certification, diverse certification, whether it's WBE or Women's Business Enterprise Certification, or MBE certification, Minority Business Enterprise, or Veteran certification, it sets you apart from the competition. It is also, most importantly, a marketing tool. It is not going to, it doesn't mean that you will be automatically considered for a contract or receive a contract, but it is definitely a marketing tool for corporations and government agencies who are looking to work with diverse firms. The certification indicates that you have passed the rigorous guidelines that these third-party certifying agencies like the WBDC require you to submit in your application process to ensure that you are a legitimate certified owned business. If our attendees may recall, a few years ago, there was quite a bit of information about fraud, about businesses who were claiming to be certified as diverse firms, but they were not. So the certification process is an insurance for our corporate partners and our government agencies that the business owner has gone through the rigorous process of being qualified as a certified firm. That includes submitting your tax returns, submitting your articles of incorporation, submitting great detailed information that is all submitted confidentially, I should add. And then our certification committees review that information. After that, there's a site visit to interview the business owner. After that, the certification is reviewed by the committee and a determination is made whether or not they meet the strict qualification guidelines. So I mentioned as a marketing tool, our corporate partners often reach out to the WBDC, my WBDC colleagues, and ask us to vet candidates. So we become an extended arm of your marketing efforts, because the more we know about the certified firm, the better position we are to recommend them to our corporations who are looking for diverse firms. So the second part of your question, can I give an example? I'm going to give an example that illustrates the benefits of certification and also identifies opportunities. So we have a very large women-owned certified firm in the Chicago market who was doing business throughout the region in the Midwest territory. She had a contract as a prime with a major utilities firm, but she didn't have the capacity to meet all of their requirements. So she was very creative. What she did was she engaged with a minority certified WBE who could provide and augment the services that the majority WBE was providing. They formed a strategic partnership. They went to market to address the needs of businesses in the utility space and government agencies in the utility space. The benefit of that strategic alliance was it allowed the prime, the majority owned firm by a WBE, to satisfy all of the requirements of the contract, and it provided an opportunity for the WBE minority firm was a little bit smaller but had capacity and expertise in certain areas. That teaming alliance allowed the smaller WBE firm to grow, and she was able to then leverage her past performance record with other utilities firms, and she actually became a prime to major utilities companies. And so the business arrangement that they agreed upon between the two firms allowed both firms to grow, to address the capacity needs. And rather than competing, they collaborated. So I'd like the attendees to keep one thing in mind. Many corporations have government contracts. If they are a prime to a government contract, on a government contract, they are required to have a subcontracting plan in place. And what that means is that prime will go out seeking MBE and WBE and veteran participation because they have to report their spend with the subcontractors. So basically, it's a win-win all around. And for the smaller, diverse firms, they don't have to worry about financing the job. They don't have to worry about bonding and insurance requirements for the job, so that they can grow while building relationships with the current prime. So it's an excellent opportunity for small firms to align with larger firms in the diversity space to get the business, to get the contracts, because corporations and government agencies want to mitigate their risk. So they want to be sure that the firms they select have the capacity to get the work done.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. Agree with all of what you said. And my favorite piece of that example that you used was the strategic partnership. And so I think that part is so important, and it's always such a great opportunity for businesses is to find opportunities to build those strategic relationships, to go after those larger opportunities or opportunities that just make you more, that will make you more competitive compared to your competition. So thank you for that, Cynthia. Tim, I know earlier you said that you were a certified LGBT. We'd love to know sort of what was the reasoning for that? Why was certification important to you as a business owner? Muted, Tim.
Yep, just noted that. Sorry about that. It's actually pretty simple. Our goal with both of our certifications, the LGBTBE and the B Corp certification, is to align our work, our team, and our clients with our values. I mean, that's really to make sure that all of our values are aligned. So on the work side, if you go and look at Mightybytes portfolio, we work with a lot of mission-driven organizations, nonprofits, social enterprises. We're focused on doing mission-driven work, and so we want to make sure that as an LGBT business enterprise that they're on board with that as well. And then from our team, we want to have a place where people can bring their whole selves to work if they so choose, and can just enjoy their work and have a diverse workplace in whatever ways we can. And then in terms of our clients, we as same with the work we're doing, we just want to make sure that everything is aligned and that we're doing work that aligns with our values.
Great reason. So I know, so of course, you mentioned that you were also a B Corp. And so I had the fortune of doing the site visit for Mightybytes, I guess back in 2018, probably, when you all became a certified LGBTBE. And at that time, that was when I first learned about what a B Corp was. And so I was so unfamiliar with it. I think I left that meeting that day and did a whole lot of Googling. It has been sort of an opportunity that I'm still have been excited to learn about. And so I can imagine that there may be others who are not familiar with what a B Corp, what B Corp is. I know that it also is really a great tool, and also is a way for people to also be able to communicate values, to be able to execute or to communicate certain benchmarks and measurements, as well as it relates to internal and external opportunities. And so it's another great tool to really think about sort of standing out from the competition. And so can you explain sort of just what B Corp is, how it works, and all of the gist of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. So B Corps come in two different flavors. There is a public benefit corporation. A benefit corporation is a legal designation similar to an S Corp or a C Corp or LLC or whatever. And what that essentially allows you to do is it allows you to claim a public benefit of some sort. You get to define what that is alongside your mission to pursue profit. And the only thing that you're required to do is that you report on how you met that public benefit. So if it's alleviating poverty, gender equity, whatever the benefit to society is, you need to use a third-party, assessment tool to verify that, and then you need to report on how you did on that at the end of every year. And then there's the second flavor is a certified B Corp, and so that's a rigorous assessment that helps a company meet the highest verified third-party standards for social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. And that certification B Corps go through every 3 years. And it's about 200 or so questions that help you align your values and the things that you do as a business with good practices, best practices for how you treat your workers, what your role in a community is, how you govern the company and actually, the rules that you make and such like that, what your environmental impact is, and then who your customers are. So you're essentially graded on each of those things. And then if you meet a 80-point threshold out of a possible 200, you can become a certified B Corp. The tool that we use to do that, I'll actually share this link as well, is the B Impact Assessment. And it's a free tool that anybody can use. And you don't have to become a B Corp, a certified B Corp, in order to use it. If you just want to understand how your business is creating positive social and environmental impact, or some of the things that you might want to do in order to do that, the B Impact Assessment is a great tool to figure out where you are and kind of set a baseline.
Tim, I know you kind of mentioned sort of the environmental impact as one of the areas of focus, but I know we've also talked about sort of the commitment that the B Corp or the assessment has around racial justice. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mentioned the 5 categories of the B Impact Assessment. The 3 kind of pillars of our work that this all kind of takes shape in to form collective action in the world is climate action, racial justice, and stakeholder governance. So stakeholder governance is really around, leveling the playing field in terms of ownership and just kind of how you govern a company. And racial justice is obviously the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts within an organization. And then climate action is what we do to take collective action against the climate crisis. And so, there's questions within the B Impact Assessment that ask you about how you address issues of team diversity, for instance, and how you offset carbon emissions, for instance, and such. So those are the 3 pillars that we work in. And then within those pillars, there are collective action groups of B Corps. So there's like a B Corp Climate Collective. There are 4,000 B Corps worldwide, about 40 of which are in Illinois. And there are the B Corp Climate Collective is a group of organizations that are, come from all industries and all areas of the B Corp community, working to address issues of climate justice and climate change. The Dismantle Collective is a same kind of group of B Corps looking to dismantle white supremacy. So there's We the Change is a group of women B Corp leaders that are working on gender equity and that kind of thing. So there's these within the community, there's these great pods of organizations. We even have a Be Proud community that's made up of B Corp leaders and employees that identify as LGBT.
Thank you, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Cindy, one thing I think that was interesting about what Tim kind of just mentioned is when we think about the B Corp assessment, it seems like, well, I'm not sure how long sort of the racial justice part might have been a component of it, if not from the beginning, but it's great. It's interesting that there's been a tool here that has been existed to push small businesses forward in being more committed to racial justice and equity. And it seems like we just started seeing that sort of transition and types of commitments starting to happen last year, for sure, I think, in our corporate and government sectors. So I'm wondering what you're seeing, as one who's at the WBDC. What are you seeing from corporate and government partners around diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments? And how is this impacting the way that they are making business decisions or selecting their suppliers?
What I'm seeing, Jerome, is a paradigm shift uh, at the corporate level. I'm going to focus my response to your question on corporations because that's where I'm seeing the biggest change. Uh, in the past, and I mean the long past, starting in the 70s, there was a movement to include minority-owned businesses as a result of the social unrest following the 60s. So in the early 70s, corporations were reaching out. They had aggressive programs. And then over time, that just kind of tapered off. There were not the same governmental pressures for companies to do business with minority firms. And most recently, the paradigm has shifted to or from supplier diversity coming under the guidelines of procurement initiatives. It shifted to working with diverse suppliers through a diversity, equity, and inclusion business model that corporations are embracing. That's a significant change. And it's significant because many of our diverse owned businesses aren't aware of the shift. They still are of the mindset that there are supplier diversity goals and set asides and emphasis. Uh, as a result of the social unrest in the past year or so, corporations are looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what that means is they're looking at their entire organization. They have redeployed their teams as well as reassess their efforts and their activities. So equity doesn't mean one size fits all. So the equity piece of it means that we are going to see a lot of changes about how corporations view equity in the workplace and in the marketplace. The diversity piece of it means that they will be looking to diversify the complexion of their employees. They will be looking at how people advance throughout the organization. And the inclusion piece is kind of all encompassing. So what we are experiencing is a laser focus on procurement to a more uh, overarching reach into diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we don't really know how that's going to look 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year from now. So I'm not really able to give you a definitive answer to that question. I'm just sharing with you what I'm seeing. The conversations are not about supplier diversity so much. They are really more about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So in my business advisory counseling, I encourage my clients to go to the corporate supplier diversity websites to see what these corporations are currently saying, to understand through research with the corporations, to understand how they are going to be looking at their supplier base, how they are going to be evaluating their vendor base, and become knowledgeable about the corporation. And once you have that intel, once you are knowledgeable about where they are in that um, DEI space, you can begin to think about how your company can add value to meet their needs. And that's where you creating a value proposition that succinctly addresses problems you can solve for that corporation, value that you add in the solutions that you provide, or money that you can save, because you've got to get their attention. And in order to do that, the conversation is no longer, "Hi, my name is Cynthia Johnson. I'm a certified WBE." The conversation is really about getting their attention and helping them understand where you can insert yourself into that supply chain to help them advance these new initiatives that they are currently trying to figure out the problems they have to solve. So that's one thing on the DEI space, is just be well educated about what the corporation is looking for and how you can help them meet their needs and their goals. The other focus I want to share, it has to do with capacity. What the WBDC learned coming out of the COVID pandemic, and we learned this through our access to capital initiatives that we had, as well as surveys that we conducted with our clients. What we learned was that even the more established businesses didn't have their backroom operations in order. And what that means is they didn't have um, access to capital to get them through a challenging period. They didn't have their financial documents in place so that when they went to banks, if they needed to expand their capital to run the business, they were not ready to have the conversations with the bankers. They didn't have key business components. They didn't have a handle on the business components. So they weren't ready, they weren't capable, many of them, to manage through the crisis. So I strongly encourage our diverse business owners to take the time coming out of the pandemic and pay attention to lessons learned and identify, your SWOT, your strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. It's a good time. It's a great time to reevaluate your business plan so that you are informed, so that you are ready to make informed business decisions based on the current climate. There will be many opportunities coming out of the pandemic for business owners that have the capacity to reinvent themselves or pivot, but that's going to take uh, rethinking about your business model. It also means that this is an ideal time to take care of those existing customers, because it takes a lot more time to chase new business. Uh, your existing customers already know you. Talk to them about how you can meet their needs coming out of, because everybody's coming out of the pandemic crisis. So that's important. Also, understanding your profit model, really getting a handle on the profitability of your business, your profit margins, and doing an analysis of where your most profitable business is coming from. If you have clients that are high maintenance and low margins, you might want to rethink that. And this is a great time to do that. And if it's time to let go of some business so that you can focus on more profitable business to expand your footprint in the marketplace, as you pivot, spend some time thinking about that. Spend some time talking with your customers. Spend some time talking with your team and planning how you are going to grow in this new world that we are all going to be living in coming out of the pandemic. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think, sort of that second part that you mentioned, talked about were definitely some other examples of some things where we should all be able to start speaking to as we move forward. I think what you mentioned about, especially during the earlier part of COVID and the pandemic, we definitely saw where small businesses were not necessarily in the capacity to be able to handle projects that they were already responsible for, or ones that they went after doing the early stages of the pandemic. And again, it's a difference of being a large established organization versus an organization that just generally is well organized and is able to handle capacity based on the size of their organization. So those are two separate things. And so don't think that she's saying you must be a large, super established organization. Again, those are two separate opportunities. And around the first point, I think you ended up I was about to ask you the question about, well, what do you think the conversations are going to look like? And then you beat me to it. But then at the end, you sort of almost did answer the question. It is now, as a supplier, I need to be talking about how can my services, my products move your business forward in meeting these DEI goals that your company has set. I mean, we've seen from Chase, JP Morgan Chase, their investment of $30 billion to advance racial equity. From Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, their $100 million investment to reduce healthcare disparity. So how can you, as a diverse-owned business, partner with these companies to help them meet the strategic DEI goals that they've established? And so that is an answer to the question. What the conversation is going
And I
to
would
start
like to add, for our diverse firms that are Black and brown owned businesses, there are, you mentioned Chase, you mentioned Blue Cross Blue Shield. Many of our corporate partners are initiating programs that are specifically targeted to and for Black and brown businesses. So it's a good time to approach them. Unfortunately, you can't meet them at our annual conferences or in person at our matchmakers. So it's really important that you have that you prepare a virtual presentation so that you can reach out and engage with these corporations that have programs that are targeted to and for Black and brown businesses, because they are very interested in you. And it's important that you're able to use technology to make a virtual introduction and a good first impression. For more information about programs targeted, you can, again, Google the corporations and you will find on their websites the programs that they are currently putting in place to attract Black and brown businesses and provide training for them.
Perfect. Thank you, Cynthia. Tim, so again, we just, as we think about, the road that we're headed down, where corporations are wanting to be better corporate citizens, where consumers are starting to demand more and clear expectations around what a good business is. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts, suggestions, strategies, or examples of things that you've seen around how businesses have been able to communicate their values around racial justice. Anything stands out?
Yeah, sure. I think that in any of the issues that I had mentioned earlier, we've seen companies go down the path of greenwashing, pinkwashing, wokewashing, all of this kind of stuff. They put out what they think is a cause-driven message and they fall flat on their face. And I think that the problem with so much of that is that the companies aren't walking their values. They weren't walking the talk. They're not, you know what I mean? They're not actually executing out as a company. They may be focusing on one thing over here while this other stuff in their company is not really on the up and up. And that's one of the things I really like about the B impact assessment, because it is so rigorous. It really forces you to look at your entire business, whether you're a small single person business or a very large organization. It forces you to look at your entire business and really think about how you communicate around issues like racial justice and environmental justice and that kind of thing. And so, it helps you, get the operational kind of stuff. Cynthia was mentioning, having your back office operations in order. And that's a really important thing, not just on the financial side, but just on all of the kind of, levers and switches that run your business, including your communications, including your HR, all of that kind of stuff, making sure that all of that is aligned with your values. And the companies that are able to do that tend to be around longer. They tend to be more financially successful. They tend to be, tend to do better across the board. And so, to me, when you see something, for instance, from Patagonia, you see a message about, how they're suing Trump over Bears Ears, monument out in Utah. That's from a place of transparency and accountability, and that they really truly believe what it is that they're doing that. Versus, you see, take an example from a couple of years ago where and these are both environmental examples, but Starbucks said it was going to try to reduce its use of plastic, and then it swapped out its plastic cups with another kind of plastic that was, had ended up being worse for the environment than better. And so, that's a perfect example of an organization not being able to see all of its moving parts. And so I think that in any case, when you're talking about racial justice or environmental justice or some sort of social justice, you need to take a good look at yourself first and be sure that you're coming from a place of authenticity before you do anything.
Very great feedback and reminder for everyone, Tim. Thanks so much for sharing that. And sort of like thinking about that, as we sort of transition, another place where, when I've attended city council meetings or even conversations in sort of corporate contracting, there's always questions that move beyond the diversity of the owner. Of course, we love it, we want it, we appreciate it, but it's one thing to have diverse ownership, but it's also another thing to have a diverse team. And so I'm wondering, Cynthia, if you can speak to a little bit of the value of having a diverse team and what this brings to a business. I know for me, the one reason that this came to mind was, I know for me, like Cynthia, you said earlier, there's a site visit portion involved with the certification process. And in that process in that portion of the process, it's a way for us to really make sure that you as the owner understand the day-to-day operations of your business, who does what, and how everything gets made. And there's always a question about what is the hiring and firing look like for your organization. And I'm always so surprised. I would say 8 times out of 10, and maybe this might just be a small business thing. Folks always say, oh, I just hired someone from my network. Oh, it's just word of mouth. And so while that's definitely, I think, a great opportunity for our community sometimes in being able to make sure that we're, maybe hiring diverse people from our communities, it also puts us in a situation where we're not bringing in full diversity of thought, full diversity of the communities that we're serving. And so in some instances, we might not be doing a great job in setting up our teams for success. So I'm wondering what you're hearing from corporations or government around expectations for team diversity.
The greatest benefit, as I see it, of team diversity is that you have the opportunity to get the diversity of thought, right? You have people at the table who are using their voices based on, pardon me, based on their experiences. And the more diverse the experiences are, the more you can begin to implement plans for the business based on shared values. And you touched on something that is so critical. The natural tendency is to hire people like you that have similar backgrounds, that have similar experiences. Maybe they were in the same sorority or fraternity or what have you. But if your team is not diverse, you are really getting a myopic view of opportunities in the marketplace. So the more diversity in hiring practices, the better, in my opinion. Pardon me. The caveat there is it's not enough to just hire diverse people. You need to be able to create a culture and an environment that is welcoming to diverse employees, that allows them to reach their greatest potential, which in turn allows the business to grow. So corporations have, uh, they take notice when they see a diverse firm, when they talk to an owner who has a diverse team, great notice is taken of that. So that becomes an advantage for the business. And at the same time, corporations have not always done a very good job of ensuring that their culture allows for people to move up the management ladder and to create opportunities for diverse employees. So I would say for small business owners, uh, keep in mind that uh, the makeup of your employee or your team structure uh, is only going to improve if you can have a balance of diversity in terms of age, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of technology skills, and most important, in terms of professional experiences.
Definitely. Again, as Cynthia said, corporations and government are taking note of the diversity of your team. I've seen conversations happen at city council where aldermen have, talked about someone coming before them with a team of people who look nothing like the people who live in the city where we reside. And so it's one of those things is like, how do you show up wanting to provide a service, wanting to create a product for a community or company when no one on your team is able to bring or to share any sort of personal impact, personal connections about what this actually looks like. And so for your corporate partner, for your government partner, potentially, for us, I would imagine the assumption is that you're just Googling or just making some stuff up because you don't really know. So without having that full diversity of a team where you have folks who provide the diversity of the thought, who can provide real life examples of how this work impacts certain communities, then you're definitely not you're not putting your best foot forward. And I think back to the conversations I have with so many people about making their first hire. Everyone's always like, oh, I want to give up control, or they're not going to do things the way that I do or how I want them to do. And the great thing about diversity and diversity of thought is that just because you've been doing something a way for a period of time doesn't mean it's necessarily the right way or the best way. And so again, think about what that diversity or people outside of your network who don't have your same thoughts and opinions, how that really could help to impact your business and the bottom line, especially as you're trying to make decisions. And of course, there's tons of research that talks about the impact that diversity and diverse teams have. We know that diverse companies enjoy 2.3 times higher cash flow per employee. Racially and ethnically diverse companies are 35% more likely to perform better. Diverse companies are much more likely to capture new markets. We all need new markets and new business. And inclusive companies are 120% more likely to hit financial goals. And so all of those things are the result of showing up to your client with a diverse team, ready to have real conversations about what's happening with the clients that they serve. And so definitely be prepared to talk about what that looks like.
And
Tim,
Jerome, if I could jump in, not only not only is it an opportunity to be prepared to talk about it, if you do have a diverse team, make sure you're including a photo or images of that team in your marketing materials. Uh, that sends a very strong message to prospective clients.
Yes, definitely indeed. Thank you for that good tip and reminder. So Tim, one thing that you also mentioned earlier around the B Corp was, in the assessment was one of the values around climate change and environment. Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but I think we all have heard and sort of seen in news about really just where our environment and climate is heading. And, as we move forward, I think hopefully more consumers, more individuals will become more concerned about how corporations and businesses are impacting our environment. And obviously, we want to have a great place to live and grow our businesses. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about why small businesses should be concerned about climate change, environment, and communicating our commitment to these areas, and what's the value in communicating our commitments around environment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's not just communicating, it's doing, and doing and communicating, and have those things, working hand in hand, like I mentioned before. And this is such a perfect segue from the last topic, because really, with climate change being the existential crisis of our time, we all need to look forward to being more resilient and more adaptable, and understanding disruption and kind of the unknown things that are out there in regards to what kind of havoc climate change can wreak on sure, it's on environments, and weather related disasters are the most obvious and most in your face part of that right now. But what you do to the planet, you do to the people. And so there's you have to put people at the heart of any kind of climate change issue. And so there's a lot of uncertainty there and unknowns, and we're already seeing a lot of social disruption and climate refugees around the world, from sea level rise and things like that. Now, how does that impact my business as a small digital agency in Chicago? It could mean a number of different things. Access to services. It could be access to if a lot of companies in my industry are offshoring, or they work with a global team, even small agencies now. And if one portion of the team is in a place where they no longer have access to the internet, or they no longer have access to technology and stuff like that, that directly impacts that very day's work. And so that's like an in-your-face kind of thing. And so I think that in order for us to be more prepared for the uncertainty that's coming ahead, and you can just easily just look at COVID-19 and how many businesses were adversely impacted by that, because it just came up out of nowhere, and it really sent a lot of businesses into a tailspin. We're looking at those kind of level events as being more and more frequent. So any business needs to shore itself up, and also prove to those folks it wants to do business with that they're ready and that they're able to kind of handle that kind of stuff. And so it's a recurring theme throughout this conversation for sure. But just making sure that your business is ready and there for the long term is going to help you deal with whatever climate change can end up throwing at you as the years pass by.
Definitely, I think that future looking perspective is definitely what's going to be of value, especially when we're thinking about sort of this climate change or environmental impact conversation. I think in some places I don't think not a lot of people are overly paying attention to how suppliers are impacting climate or the environment, but we are definitely moving in that direction where it's not only going to be important as to how BP is impacting the environment, but they'll have to make sure that is trickling down to all their suppliers, so that through that full chain of the work that they do collectively as a business unit, and through the suppliers that they're working with, they can talk about how they're reducing carbon emissions and all these other types of opportunities. And so if you want to be engaged with these types of organizations in the future, you definitely need to start planning now about how you can improve and streamline your own commitments around environment, around climate change, so that you can support these companies in their own efforts around these spaces as well. So thank you so much, Tim, for that. So again, everyone, please type any questions that you have in the chat box, or you can virtually raise your hand. And so I did get a question for you, Cynthia, which is a little bit more so, I guess, about the importance of us just working together as organizations that support small businesses. I think oftentimes, people don't always realize that organizations like ours are working together and really collaborating to make sure that diverse owned and ally owned businesses across Chicago and Illinois are being provided the support and resources that they need. And again, just making sure that no voices or no business owners are left out. So I wondered if you could just speak to the value or the importance of organizations like ours working together to support business owners in our community.
Sure, I'm happy to speak to that. The WBDC's philosophy has always been to collaborate with other community partners. We all do better working together, and we do not have a competitive mindset. We like to collaborate with partners like the LGBTQ chamber. We have a formal process in place with the CMSDC. I know that they were one of the speakers on your program today. So the WBDC and CMSDC actually formed a partnership, and we are in our second year of working together on a program called IMBA. And what IMBA does is it's a curriculum-based program that trains business service organizations. We are train the trainer to help smaller community partners understand how they can communicate with their clients about procurement opportunities with corporations and government agencies. And the first year, our focus was on train the trainer, working with all these smaller business service organizations. This year, our focus is on helping people understand 4 components that are necessary to know if you're looking to contract with major corporations or government agencies. So we're actually taking people through presentations that outline the process for creating a capability statement, for creating the marketing plan, for creating your pitch to corporate or government agency. So, and I know you and I have collaborated on a number of projects in the past, and we are also collaborating with the Veterans third-party certifier that certifies veterans-owned businesses. We collaborate with the Hispanic Chamber and a number of SBDCs and PTECs throughout the Chicago metropolitan area. And what I didn't mention earlier in my introduction is that the WBDC certifies women-owned businesses in a 9-state Midwest region. So we have offices, we're headquartered in Chicago. We have an office in Twin Cities, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, St. Louis, Missouri, and Kansas City. So our footprint covers the upper Midwest. And in each of those communities, my colleagues are working with local business partners and community partners to get the word out, because we are all working toward the same end goal, and that is to help diverse firms get access to contacts that will eventually lead to contract opportunities for them. So we are an assist organization that measures economic impact in our community. So working together allows us to work better, getting the word out and making sure that we're making a strong impact on businesses started, businesses retained, number of people hired, and growth throughout underserved communities.
Thank you
That
so
was
much,
a great, thank you for that question, because it's very important that people understand we're working together.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your partnership. And I know we'll also soon enough get to do some hopefully great work with BCorp Illinois as well.
Right, right.
I'm excited about that partnership to come. It looks like you gave such great information that we've answered everyone's questions, or you just blown their mind, or they need to come up with a proper way to ask those questions. And so folks will be reaching out to you soon, I imagine. So as just a final wrap up, or just final thoughts, or just parting words, anything you'd like to share before we sign off today? Tim, I'll start with you.
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me here, and for starting this conversation and having this business roundtable discussion. And the panels have been really interesting and really fascinating and engaging and such. So in terms of a parting thought, measure your impact. How's that?
That works well. It's amazing how that applies to nonprofit work as well. Measure your impact.
For sure, yeah.
Cynthia, anything from you?
Yes, my parting thought is to all of our attendees today is to do the research, look for the opportunities with corporations and governmental agencies. Governmental agencies are a great place to start because they post their bid opportunities. You could go to, and if you work with your local PTAC resource, and the WBDC is a PTAC resource, they can guide you through how to identify those contract opportunities. And despite what you might have heard, the government agencies, they do pay in a timely fashion. On the corporate side, they do not post their contract opportunities ever. So it's important for you to build your network. They need to know who you are, okay? So you need to do the research. You need to create a target list of 10, no more than 10 companies based on your research. Target who you want to work with. Go to their supplier diversity website, register your business if they look like a viable target for you to do business with. Register your business in the supplier diversity portal so that they know that you're there. You will be part of a database once you do that. But the work doesn't end there. You've got to let them know you're out there. You need to build a relationship with the supplier diversity manager. They are your advocate. They don't make any buying decisions, but they are the ones that manage the supplier diversity database portals. So when an end user has a need, they're going to go to the supplier diversity professional and say, who do you have in the database? So you need to make sure that they know who you are, that you're not sitting passively in the database. So once you find their name, shoot them an email with your capability statement. If you're certified, let them know which agency you're certified with, and periodically stay in touch with them. They are very, very busy people, so chances are you may not hear from them immediately, but it's incumbent upon you to make sure you are helping them get to know you and the benefits of doing business with your company. And remember, small businesses are agile. You guys know how to turn on a dime. Corporations recognize that, and you're innovators. So, speak to your strengths first. And if you happen to be a diverse certified firm, that's kind of icing on the cake. You can mention that at the end of the conversation, but always, always, always lead with your strengths, your capabilities, and your value propositions. So Jeremy, thanks again for asking me to be part of today's session. I enjoyed it. And if anyone would like to reach out to me, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Or Jeremy, will you be sending that out?
Yeah, so we'll be connecting everyone. So in my follow-up email, I'll connect everyone to either your email or your LinkedIn profile, and then folks will be able to connect with you afterwards. So a huge thank you again to Cynthia and Tim for joining us in this final session today and providing their expertise. It is greatly appreciated.